This is SoundNotion, the weekly podcast for new music and music news. I'm Patrick Gulo.
I'm Nate Blayton.
I'm Sam Merciers.
And I'm David McDonald.
And this week we are happy to have with us the music director and founder of the Irving Fine Society, celebrating Irving Fine centennial this year. And he's also a concert producer at the Library of Congress, Nick Brown. Nick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I think this is a really good opportunity to have you on the show because not only do we get to talk about Irving Fine and everything about him and the centennial that's coming up, which will be celebrated at the Library of Congress this coming December. That's correct, right?
Yeah.
But also kind of like how the Library of Congress programs. I mean, there are incredible programs throughout the year at the Library of Congress. I saw some of them, just one concert this past April with Academy for Alto Music Berlin, and it was really fantastic. And I'd kind of like to know more about programming at Library of Congress. So
Sure.
I'm happy you can join us today to talk about that.
It's my pleasure.
So I think first, maybe I'd like to go into Irving Fine a little bit, because Irving Fine is a name that I think a lot of people know, but don't know the music, really.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you get involved with Irving Fine Society, and what interests do you how does he interest you as a composer?
Sure. So I was first exposed to Fine's music as an undergrad at Brandeis, and his connection to Brandeis is that he was the founder of the music department and also the School of Creative Arts. So he's very much revered in the institution's history. And he was also the one who brought Copland and Bernstein to the faculty, and Harold Shapiro and Arthur Berger. And he very much made Brandeis into the place where composers and musicologists could come for really top-notch graduate education. And so I was exposed to his music in my freshman year and decided that I loved it, especially the choral music. And also I'm a horn player, so the two woodwind quintets really struck me. And then from there I just started learning about the music. One of my classmates was actually his granddaughter, Nina Hurwitz. So it was fun to get to know the family through her, and founded the Irving Fine Society in December of '06. And our first event was in the spring of '07 at the Festival of the Creative Arts at Brandeis. And since I left Brandeis, the society became sort of its own independent thing, and now we're the official representation of the Fine family for working with artists and recording projects and working with Boozy as well, and the Library of Congress and that sort of deal.
Great. And as far as performances that are happening this year, who is celebrating around the country or around the world?
Yeah, so we kicked it off last December at Carnegie Hall. Orpheus Chamber Orchestra performed the Serious Song, and then we had a really cool launch event. And we've had things ranging from California to Milan to Brandeis to Boston Modern Orchestra Project, with whom we partnered for a big concert of Fine's orchestral works back in May. And then this fall we have events. There was one actually at Lincoln Center. They did I believe it was the Hourglass, along with Beethoven 9, which was bizarre, but it worked somehow. And then at the library we have a week-long mini-festival, December 2nd through 6th, which is going to include several concerts and some films and panels and a lecture and all kinds of cool stuff. And then one of the other highlights from the fall is Brandeis's major centennial programs, which are on November 15th. And there's going to be a symposium, and then Music from Copeland House is going to do a concert there, and then repeat it in New York on the 16th.
Nice. So it sounds like there are plenty of events for everyone around the country, I guess, to get some Irving Fine or live performances of Irving
Definitely,
Fine.
which is fun because it's not this is more than there usually is, especially of the instrumental stuff. And one of the neat things that we're trying to do this year in working with the family and the library is really highlight the music from his repertoire that doesn't get performed frequently. So, for example, the orchestral works don't get that much airtime anywhere because a lot of them are so costly to put on, and some of them are too difficult for university orchestras. So, for example, at the library, we actually asked our colleague David Plylar, who's on staff and also a composer, to do a transcription of the Toccata Concertante. And so that's going to be premiered at the library on December 6th with Oliver Hagen and Daniel Pesca playing, which will be really neat. And we're also doing bunch of the choral repertoire with the choir of Clare College from Cambridge, and then the Chiara String Quartet and Simona Dinnerstein are going to play a concert, including a new commission by Jefferson Friedman, which we commissioned for the Fine Centennial.
Great. So I mean, I guess around New York at least, when I'm going to concerts here and there, I don't go to a lot of concerts that have Irving Fine on the program. Do you think that Irving Fine not being performed as much as maybe a few other composers has to do with, like you had mentioned, a few in some of the orchestral works being fairly difficult, or it's just that somehow his reputation didn't come to light like in the way that Copland's did or something?
Yeah.
Do you know how to like combat this, and is it changing?
Yeah, I think it is noticeably changing within the last few years since we kind of started this concerted effort of the Fine Society, and we now have a pretty solid team of folks who, we're trying to expose new people to Fine's music all the time, everywhere, and I think it's having some effect. Because generally, I haven't heard, at least in the last few months, a negative reaction to his music on first listen. For example, his choral repertoire is some of the greatest American choral music that exists, and that's why it's really popular. But you have then the Alice in Wonderland songs, which a lot of student choirs will do. But then the Hourglass and Choral New Yorker and that sort of thing are much more difficult and requires a professional choir, which, as we all know, there are not many professional choirs about anymore. And unless their directors are really passionate about the repertoire, they're not going to take it on. So I think it's a culture of just trying to spread the news and spread the repertoire, and increasing the online presence of his music. And one of the neat things that we're seeing is that he actually does stand out from a lot of his colleagues, such as Harold Shapiro and Arthur Berger, whose music is not as out there as Fine. So it makes us feel good that something has been going right. And I think the whole impetus really goes back to his wife, Verna, who from the moment he passed made it her life's news about his music and make sure that Aaron Copland was advocating for the music, and Bernstein, that kind of deal.
Yeah.
As I was looking at the Performing Arts blog for the Library of Congress, the post that you did a couple days ago, I noticed that you're collecting oral histories on Nicholas Fine, or on Irving Fine. Could you tell us a little bit about that project?
Sure. It was a really fun project because I've spent the last 10 years just hearing the stories about him, and none of them were getting captured anywhere. And so the library is really big on doing oral histories and interviews. Through the support of the Werner and Irving Fine Fund that is at the library, we were able to go out and do a few of these oral histories, and then we'll capture more stories when folks are down for the Centennial in December. I got to speak with Marty Boykin, who was a student of Fine's, and he was also the Fine professor at Brandeis for many years of composition. So he also studied with Hindemith and has some crazy stories, which is really cool. And then I spoke with Esther Geller, who is Harold Shapiro's wife, and she was very close, if not best friend, of Verna and Irving for many, many years. They traveled together, they worked together, and it was very much a family that sort of made Brandeis what it was in terms of music back then. And she was a key part of that. And then I also spoke with Fine's youngest sister, Barbara Cates, who lives up in Providence, and she's someone who hasn't been as active in the promotion of Fine, so we haven't heard much of her stories aside from when she was interviewed for the Fine biography that Philip Ramey did. But it was really nice to get more of a glimpse of what he was as a child or as a kid, and also as a youngster and going to Harvard and kind of making his way and learning more about the family dynamic was really neat too. So I encourage anyone to go on to the library site and give those a listen, because it's a really great glimpse into the sort of mid-20th century American landscape of music.
Wonderful. And yeah, I see there's transcripts of each of them too, if you'd prefer to read, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, ADA requirements.
Thanks.
Now, is there a sort of like documentary in the works for Irving Fine, or like are all of these interviews and stories going to be compiled into like a larger project that might be mass produced or something?
Well, one of the neat things that the Library of Congress does is we try to put all of our events and programs and interviews online in webcast form. So we put them out via our YouTube channel, also on loc.gov, and then on iTunes U, because we really want to make sure that what we do is not just for the local audience, but it's for the national audience and the international audience. So, for example, right now we're working on a series of videos with Richard Wernick, and he did a masterclass on the Fine Fantasia for us with some Peabody prep students a couple years ago. And this is going to be a really nice series of podcasts where he introduces Fine, who Fine was, who his music was, and then he's going to do an in-depth coaching of each of the movements of the Fantasia, and then we'll have another episode where it's just the complete run-through of the piece. And then for the events in December, we're going to have everything up on the web in a few months after the event, so that's going to include 3 panel discussions. We're going to have the Marine Band Woodwind Quintet performing both of Fine's woodwind quintets. I'm going to be giving a lecture, and then the 2 major concerts, and then we have some other peripheral performances too.
Wow, great.
Yeah.
So this can kind of work into, I guess, programming at the Library of Congress. So in your capacity as music director and founder of the Irving Fine Society, do you go up to, others in the Library of Congress, or however decisions are made in programming there, and say, guys, Irving Fine 100, let's do it? And basically,
well, yeah, it's actually a really interesting thing, because I was doing the Fine Society long before I arrived at the library, so there is a very fine but hard line of separation of my hats. So I'm not necessarily advocating for things at the library, but I go and make things happen with regards to Fine. So the impetus for the centennial is because it is such a significant centennial. He's one of our major special collections, and the library.
It works out.
Yeah, it does work out great, and so it's really nice to be able to facilitate a good relationship between the family and the library, and we all work together as a team, which is really great.
So about programming at the library, is it what would you say the mission of presenting concerts at the Library of Congress is? I mean, do you specifically make it a mission to focus on a certain American composers? I assume play a really large part in the library's programming. Do you have season themes, those sorts of things? How are these decisions really being made?
Yeah. So there is a team of 3 producers who do the programming. Our senior producer is Anne McLean, and then David Plyler and myself are the 2 newer producers. And we work directly with the chief of the division and the assistant chief to develop the series for each season. We generally have a theme per season, and we usually pick a few major anniversaries to address within that season. And then our seasons kind of get built from the ground up from the point of commissions, which is really neat. So all of our concerts are put together based on private money that has been given to the Library of Congress to administer. And that tradition goes back to 1925 when Elizabeth Sprague Coolidge gave the initial gift for a concert series at the library. She was actually not related to the president, which is interesting, though she used to get called the First Lady all the time. But so she had a really neat story in that she told Congress, I want you to build me a concert hall and start this concert series, and I'll give you the money for it. And legislation was passed, literally an act of Congress was passed in January of 1925, and by October this hall was built within the compound of the Library of Congress, and the first concert took place. So after her, there were a whole bunch of other philanthropists and major figures who wanted to contribute to this legacy of having the Library of Congress present concerts which are all free to the public, which is really cool. And the mission for that was to make all these types of music accessible to anyone who wants to hear them, whether it be early music or the hottest new music or romantic repertoire. So we had other gifts like Gertrude Clark Whittall, who actually donated our Stradivari instrument collection and a lot of Schoenberg manuscripts. And then we've had other major gifts like the Hans Kindler Foundation, the Dina Costin and Roger Shapiro Fund for New Music, which has been huge in terms of helping us commission new works, and supported our Oliver Nussin residency and John Adams residency recently. And then we also have a fund called the McKim Fund, which does violin and keyboard music. And then there are a bunch of other funds, but basically a lot of these funds have stipulations as to what instrumentation can be used for a concert. So for example, we have the Landowska Fund, which has to be for a harpsichord concert. And then we have the Costin Fund, which has to be for a new music project that Dina Costin, the composer, would have liked. And so that covers some modernist composers and then some contemporary American composers, and generally has to include a commission. So we kind of figure out what our commissions are going to be based on all of this quirky money, which we really appreciate and we always are seeking more of. And then from there we go out and try and develop a balanced season. And one of the interesting things about our series is that we can't just do art music. And there was a time when that was more of the model, but nowadays, because of the library's growing mission to address all genres of everything, which is kind of a daunting task, we have also jazz concerts, we have popular music concerts, we have folk concerts, we have some theater projects as well. So it's a really diverse presentation, which is fun, and there's never a dull moment for sure. So like right now we're planning commissions out 3-4 years, just like any other presenter, and then from there we figure out, you know, which groups in the U.S. we're going to present, which groups from Europe are going to be touring that we want to bring over, and what's going to be new. And one of the things that the library is really into doing with the concerts is catching really amazing artists before they break into the complete mainstream. So one example is La Risonanza with Fabio Bonizzoni, which just blew up in Europe within the last few years as an early music group, and we were the first presenter to have them in Washington last season. So a lot of groups like that, and it's fun to be able to connect with them early on.
Yeah. So as far as the library, like events, big events that happen in the Library of Congress's season, do you often partner with like the National Symphony or the opera?
Yeah, we do a lot of partnering, which is kind of the MO down here in Washington. It's a very crowded field for chamber music presenting and for music presenting in general. So we all try and increase the number of stakeholders in a project by partnering. So for example, this year we have a partnership with the Italian Embassy and the Italian Cultural Institute for Vox Luminis, which is going to perform a program of mostly Italian music, including the Domenico Scarlatti Stabat Mater. We partner with the Future of Music Coalition for our Technophiles series, which is looking at music and technology this year. And then we've partnered with the NSO in the past, not this season. We did a partnership with the Baltimore Symphony to recover a arrangement of the Star Spangled Banner by Freddie Groffet. Who else? Oh, Brightest Young Things and DCist, which are our two newest collaborators this year. DCist is an online blog news source for DC, and then Brightest Young Things is kind of an event producer and also an online forum for the sort of the young professionals crowd, and they're working with us on some really neat projects this year, film series, and also our Library Late series, which is kind of a late night club setting that we deal with. We have a couple shows in that this year.
Oh, great! Yeah.
You have a late night club setting at the Library of Congress?
Yes, believe it or not.
Congress to me.
Yes, it doesn't sound Congress-y, but it is in effect, because it's all about getting a different type of music out there and getting new audiences in. So we actually present them at another venue on Capitol Hill called the Atlas Performing Arts Center, and we're going to have cellist Katinka Klein from the Chicago Symphony and ICE doing her Intelligence in the Human Machine project, in which she's connected to an EEG headset and basically plays an extended duet with her brain. And Daniel Dehan, who is a composer, is going to be mixing electronic sounds with her brain signals, and then there are going to be all kinds of different speakers around the space. So that's going to be really cool. This is going to be the first time it's performed on the East Coast. And then we also have
brain signals convert or mean certain frequencies or something.
Yeah, and so he connects specific electronic sounds and motifs with the different signals coming from different areas in the brain. And what's neat about the space that we're working in is it's a black box. So there are going to be 8 speaker blocks around the space, and each speaker block has a different sound coming from the brain. So it's going to be really cool, and people are going to be walking all over the space, which will be fun. And there is a bar. And so, being Congress, we have certain limitations in terms of what we can do. So we're not like a social venue like the Kennedy Center per se, but we offer you a lot of different things. So you can come to our concerts and see the manuscripts for almost every piece that's being performed while it's being performed. It's nuts. And then you also get like the Gutenberg Bible one floor up, and Thomas Jefferson's library, which contained 13 music books, and which is why I have a job. So it's a neat venue and a really unique experience.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it's a real beautiful place. So who likes?
Patrick.
Patrick Rose.
Patrick was asking a really interesting question. But I mean, the whole idea, just maybe this is taking too many steps backward, but the whole idea of presenting concerts at the Library of Congress seems like an interesting and seemingly separate thing from the mission of a library of archiving and preserving things. And maybe I'm just not reading that correctly. Can you maybe speak a little bit about how presenting concerts falls into the mission of the Library of Congress?
So it's a pretty direct mission, which is why we do it. So basically, the Library of Congress has 3 functions nowadays. One is to serve Congress's research needs, which we do mainly through the Congressional Research Service. The second is to be a major academic research library, which we do with our collections and with our curators and reference librarians in every field. And then we also have the museum side to things. And that's where our programs fall in, because we really want to connect our amazing collections to the general public and also to the connoisseurs in each subject area. So every area of the library puts on programs, whether it's the Poetry and Literature Center or the American Folklife Center, or now we have a Young Reader Center, which is like the children's library, which is fun. And then our concerts, it's about really bringing the collections to life for people. Because yes, we have approximately 22 million items in the music division, but for those that aren't going to come study, Aaron Copland's markings in his own scores, how do you make that interesting and viable to the public? Because really the purpose of the library as a whole is to capture American culture at all times and international culture, and then make it available to anyone who wants to learn more about it. Whether that means connecting with our Flickr page, or we have some really new teacher packs on iPad apps, so you can get like this really cool interactive app of the Constitution, which incorporates all kinds of different collection items that go beyond that document, and then that can be used in primary, secondary, high school education, also in university settings. So it's all about trying to reach as diverse a body of people as possible through as many different means as is possible. So it's a really tough mission, and not many. So we are the National Library, and we do have a concert series that is much larger than pretty much any other national library, which is really neat. And that's really only because of the private donations that we've received since 1925 and Mrs. Coolidge. Because it is a tricky thing to fund the arts, and we're lucky to have some amazing philanthropists in our history who want to make sure that the public could access these things for free.
You said there that you're the National Library, and you mentioned the digital version of the Constitution that you can go in and study on the iPad. Do you do anything like that with the music collection or the concerts even that allow you to reach beyond, to really take the concert series and make that a part of being a national library?
Definitely. So we do find some issues with this with copyright, because sometimes publishers or estates don't want us to be able to put things up online, and sometimes they want to charge us huge amounts of money, which isn't reasonable for us with our budget. But we do work around that, and we find creative ways of getting things online. So, like, we have a podcast series right now where Michael Feinstein is going through our Rodgers and Hammerstein collections, and he's doing little episodes of exploring discoveries in the collections, and it includes the images of the manuscripts, and he plays excerpts from the pieces. So we had one really cool episode where there's a song that was discovered which collection was it in? Well, it was a song that was composed originally for one R&H musical, and then it turned into Getting to Know You from The King and I think it was originally in Carousel, and that was discovered by a colleague who's the expert on the Rodgers and Hammerstein's collection. So we told that story in this video podcast, and people could see the way that the lyrics evolved, the way that the music evolved, and then what the final product was. And then we actually have a huge scanning project ongoing with getting our musical treasures online. We participate in a musical treasures consortium with the major academic music libraries around the world, like the Staatsbibliothek and the Bibliothèque Nationale and BL. So there's a huge amount of treasures on there, like our Beethoven Opus 109 manuscript. So a lot of those manuscripts that you see on IMSLP actually are harvested from our website, which is interesting because they don't tend to attribute the scanning work, but interesting. Then we actually have a new website called Songs of America, where people can study anything about American history via our song resources. So whether that be sheet music scans or videos or audio recordings from the National Jukebox, or blog posts and articles and interviews, and there's a whole lot of everything. And it is sometimes difficult to navigate the pages because there's so much. So whether that means starting off with the main catalog at loc.gov, or we have a portal for the performing arts, which is called the Performing Arts Encyclopedia, and that's at loc.gov/performingarts. And one of the cool ways to connect with us is social media, because you get a lot of real-time updates about things that are going on. Curators post cool tidbits about everything, and for composers' birthdays, we like to put up really goofy or interesting or provocative posts that might highlight things about the collections or the composers that people generally don't know. And we've taken to taking shelfies, which is funny, at least us, to try and capitalize on that hashtag mayhem. But so like sometimes when we have new books coming in, we'll take a shelfie of those, or I did one of our historic orchestral programs. So I walked into our stacks, and the thing about the library is you always discover new things. People who've been there for 40 years discover new things every day, which is amazing. But I walked into the stacks and found these collections of every major American orchestra's program booklets, and I was just like freaking out. And then all the BBC Proms program booklets were in there too. So I took the shelfie, right, and then I put it up on our Facebook and connected it with the Boston Symphony, and they sent it out too, and I sent it to the BBC Proms, that kind of stuff. So we really are after making sure that people know that our collections represent all kinds of things going on everywhere, and we want to be a resource.
Nice.
That sounds fun. I'll definitely have to look for those shelfies.
Yeah. And if anyone has requests for shelfies, I'm sure we can make them happen. So definitely send us those.
What's that Twitter we should follow?
The library's main Twitter page is at Library Congress, and then the Facebook page for the Performing Arts section is facebook.com/Library of Congress Performing Arts, which is really long. So if you just type in Library of Congress Performing Arts in the search bar on Facebook, you'll find it.
All right.
And I'll send you all a link. So
signing it up right now. Yeah, we'll have links to all these things in our show notes at soundnotion.tv/sn for anybody that is interested in following these, because I would love to see some shelfies, and I'm sure you at home would like to see a shelfie or three as well.
Yes. So I have a quick question. Just from a personal point of view, do you ever look back and be kind of surprised that like an obsession with Irving Fine music has landed you working at the Library of Congress?
Yeah, I don't know if that was the only factor, but it's been really amazing, and an amazing sort of growth process for me to see it evolve, because I was just energetic freshman in college starting a project, and there's a whole process that goes with starting something from the ground up, and getting people interested and getting people to take you seriously, and it's been really rewarding. And I think the part that's been most rewarding for me has been working so closely with the family. And now this year with the centennial, Irving's daughters Claudia, Emily, and Joanna have really sought out getting their children involved. So now Irving's grandkids are all heavily involved in all of this, including Isaac Hurwitz, who is Claudia's eldest son, and Allison Stein, who is Emily's daughter, and we're working on some various other projects about Fine for the future years with them, which are going to be really neat and exciting, and I'll have to tell you all about those later when I can. But it's been really cool to see how this has evolved, and for me, I do it because I believe in the music, and I believe in what he did as a composer and as an educator, and I know that at least for myself, I wouldn't be where I am now without the sort of groundwork that he laid back in the 50s and early 60s for Brandeis, and It's a really cool project. I think it's unique. That's for sure.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's just a good lesson. We talk to us music students a lot about where you might end up, and of course, I'm going to use you as a story about. There's this horn player who. So.
Oh yeah.
That'll make a good one for the kids.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I see. In addition to doing all of this that we've been talking about, you have an additional role with the Library of Congress, conducting their chorale. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Chorale is a really interesting group. They've been around for 30 plus years. It's comprised of Library of Congress staff and some retirees and members of the community. And we do several performances per season in the Coolidge Auditorium. We're not part of the music division. We're just kind of a general library organization. But it's really fun to be able to do my conducting work at the library and also connect with colleagues through actual music making. And we usually program our concerts around major things going on at the library. So our program this fall is called Music of the Great War, and we're looking at some of the music that's in our newly released World War I sheet music archive at the library, which is pretty fun. And then we're doing some Elgar and Ravel and Fauré and Perry to sort of tie that in. And then we're actually going to do a segment focusing on the Christmas truce, which was in 1914 when the German forces and then also the British and French, they all decided to not kill each other for a few hours there, and they sang each other's Christmas carols back and forth on the front lines. So we're going to cover that, which will be kind of fun. Hopefully a more learned take on holiday music, I like to think. But, yeah.
That's wonderful, and that's cool. You mentioned like wearing all these different hats while you're at work, and so as a vocalist and a conductor, you get to bring that and share that with your colleagues as well.
Yeah, which is really fun, and everyone on our staff has the same kind of background in terms of being a performer, still actively performing, writing outside, for example. I have a colleague, Laura Schissel, who is like the Sousa expert in the world, and Percy Granger. And he conducts the Virginia Grand Military Band and the Blossom Festival Band and the orchestra at the Blossom Festival. And who else? I have a colleague named James Wintle who is trained as a singer. So he's actively singing all over the place in addition to doing his musicology work and then coming into the library and being a reference specialist and one of our really great curators. And just everyone on our staff has that kind of background, which is really amazing. And so I think it's really cool for patrons to know that when they come in, they're actually talking to someone who's not just in this sort of, academic setting, but they're actually living and breathing the music just like they are as people coming in to study. So it's really a neat environment to work in.
Yeah, that sounds great. Like a wonderful environment indeed.
Yeah.
So shall we move on to a couple stories?
Couple stories.
Story time. We talked last week about Apple giving away U2 records. You guys remember this?
Mm-hmm. I've heard
Yes.
about it nonstop from lots of people.
So, along with the announcement a couple weeks ago of the new iPhones and the Apple Watch, I successfully did not say iWatch, but the Apple Watch and the new iPhones, Apple had Bono and U2 on stage, and because they're cool and hip, and they decided to give away to all iTunes users, 500 million of them, as they kept saying, a copy of the new U2 record, Songs of Innocence. I assume we're going to be, on pins and needles awaiting their follow-up, Songs of Experience. But the Songs of Innocence album was placed in all 500 million iTunes users' libraries without their permission, which weirded a lot of people out. Automatically downloaded for people that had iCloud set up to automatically download stuff to their devices, so it burned through some people's mobile data if they had it set up to do that unexpectedly, which was probably pretty annoying. And also, not everybody, turns out, likes the same music. I don't know if you guys were aware of this phenomenon, but there are people that have different tastes in music.
Who doesn't like U2? Come on.
I think this was kind of what Apple was thinking,
Right.
But clearly they were thinking it in 1997, and
when it was a beautiful day.
Right. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were really angry, and they clearly did not anticipate this, and had to actually release a tool this week to allow people to remove Songs of Innocence from their iTunes library. It's not a normal thing that they were set up to do, but enough people were really angry about it that earlier this week we had that new tool from Apple. So thank you. Also, in these same reports, there are people that were estimating that this cost Apple around $100 million, which is kind of insane. But also, even though they said they were giving this to all 500 million iTunes users, only 2 million of them downloaded it, and only 33 million or so listened to it in some capacity of streaming it or in some way. So not really as many as 500 million people have interacted with it. I have an iTunes account. I do not remember the last time I opened the application iTunes on any machine. So I don't think I have been counted in that number. I don't know. Have you guys listened to Songs of Innocence?
I have, because I have some friends who are big U2 fans who said that it was terrible.
Well, you've heard 30 seconds of it on TV, maybe, in an Apple ad.
I listened to like a couple of songs all the way through, and I could never hear it again and not feel like I was missing out on anything. But it didn't inspire active, dislike.
No, it's not, like you said, it's not something that I would run away from if it started playing in the space that I was in, but it would also not grab me in any particular way, and I would find it very easy to ignore in the space that I was in.
Yeah.
It's pretty, pretty straight ahead 90s rock. Like, okay.
I kind of like
what else you got?
Sounds like you too. That's what I would say.
Yeah. I don't know. How do you guys feel about Apple, like, just throwing this at people? And it's weird. A lot of people were saying, oh, you're getting a free album, you shouldn't complain. You're getting free stuff, don't complain. But I think the other side of it is that my music library is kind of a personal thing, and I don't like other people manipulating it, even if it is only to add to it.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's probably what had people so upset.
Yeah, perhaps if it was maybe just like, oh, Apple is giving away this free U2 album, click here to download it if you want it.
I don't think anybody would have complained.
No.
Right? No. People still would have made fun of the U2 album, because
it's like, oh, it's worth this much that they're just going to, like, throw it at you, yeah.
Well, Nick, have you heard this new album?
I haven't heard it. I was just checking my phone. It doesn't appear to be there, so I guess I have the right privacy settings. But I would be curious to see how much U2 made out of Apple for this deal, because I can't imagine them doing it on the cheap. And is it a per download or per actual listen cost that they're getting, or is it just an overall deal that they cut?
I'm guessing it was some sort of like flat fee that was just they kind of
So there's a lot of speculation. The popular speculation is about $100 million that Apple paid U2 for this, which is insane.
Yeah, it's good those guys finally getting their big break on iTunes.
Yeah, Anthony watching the live stream says that he just checked his iTunes and it's there. He had no idea that it was there, so glad we could inform people. Give it a listen and let us know what you think, Anthony. I'm not sure that this is going to have any profound impact on U2 in any way. I think people know about them. They are going to release another version of the thing for sale that will have 5 extra tracks on it that are not in the free version that is going out to everyone. And so the people that really care about a U2 album are going to probably buy that, and then I think we'll get a much better sense of how successful the record was. And remember, these downloads that people are doing, because they're free, they do not count as record sales for U2 albums. Mm-hmm. So this thing is unlikely to do very well if we're counting record sales.
Yeah. Everybody already has it, right?
Right. I wonder. I don't know. I think one of the main complaints was people were saying that it would devalue it's further devaluing music, because it's just one other way to get a free album, and now people are just going to expect that all the music is free.
Well, see, I like the fact that they can just go in there and hotwire your iTunes iTunes and private in there. They don't get like a Kickstarter to do that with like Alarm. It just shows.
I
up
didn't
in
hear
your library.
we
Try that
lost
one
most
more
of what you just said for
Oh.
interneting.
Okay, sorry.
Say it again.
I was saying that I like the way they're able to just shoehorn things into your music library without telling you.
Yeah.
And we
Are
should.
you seriously like it? Or are you being
No.
sarcastic?
I'm building up. we need a Kickstarter. We need a Kickstarter to get them to do that with like the newest Alarm Will Sound album. You know, because
right.
that would be a public service.
Mm-hmm.
A vigilante public service. All we need is
All we need is $100 million.
That's what to say. All we need is $100 million. You have
No, I don't know.
998,000.
I bet Alarm Will Sound to do it for half of that.
I bet they would.
How nice of them.
Yeah.
Cut that sweet deal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Other news this week, the 2014 MacArthur Fellows were announced. There was only one musician on the list this year, jazz saxophonist Steve Coleman, and they've got some really cool videos on macfound.org, which if you've listened to any NPR affiliate station over the last 20 years, you know macfound.org as the URL that you have been thrown that has been thrown at you at the end of every segment of everything that you've never visited. But if you actually do visit macfound.org, you can find these nice little setup introductory videos for each of the MacArthur Fellows that are pretty cool. So congratulations to Steve Coleman, and we'll definitely be looking to see what these people do with these awards. That's kind of the cool thing about the MacArthur Awards, is that you can do whatever, like, here's a bunch of money, do whatever you want, make something
Free
cool.
money.
Make
Yeah,
something
and-
cool.
And I love, I'm always the music education advocate, I guess. And it's interesting. Steve Coleman he started a foundation that's about supporting experimental projects and things like this. So if he's doing that without, like, what is it, $1 million of free money? Don't they give you? Is it $1 million?
I don't know.
Well, it's a lot of money. So it's curious to see what he'll do with that, since he didn't have $1 million yesterday, and now he does. And he was
Well,
doing that
maybe
stuff
you can
already.
take some of that money and join a social network. Because, Sam, I can't help but notice that you have not responded to my friend request on Metropolitan.
Metropolitan, yes. Brought to my attention this week by a friend of the show, Drew McManus, on the Adaptstration blog. Several different people have written about this, but it's basically Metropolitan is a social networking platform for rich people. It costs $5,000.
Sam, you're a little quiet.
It costs $5,000 to join, and I think it's $8,000 a year. You get no ads. I would hope for $5,000. No ads, and you get file storage. So it's just a place for you to socially network with people who are as good as you and have as much money as you. Now, the reason why we're bringing this up on the show is that we all know that with labor issues and things like this continuing on for several years running now, classical music is sort of in what Drew referred to as a public relations hole. And so the guy, what is it? James Touchi-Peters? Touchi? It says, quote, former conductor of the Minnesota Philharmonic and a non-profit ensemble that somehow fails to appear. In other words, he says he's the conductor of the Minnesota Philharmonic, but Drew couldn't find a listing for.
And is it just me being a dummy? But have you guys ever heard of the Minnesota Philharmonic? Because I have not.
No, but I looked it up, and I think it's I think it might be some sort of.
Is it like a sketchy
LGBT
per-service
No,
orchestra?
I think it's a community LGBT orchestra of some sort.
Wait, so his main credential is that he conducted a volunteer orchestra?
It's very difficult to find information on this guy, but apparently there was some sort of hubbub because, like, he was not gay, and he was like the first conductor of an ensemble whose mission was to, like, have a community of gay musicians.
I think that might be worthy of some hubbub.
Well, I don't know. This was all. I mean, it's Wikipedia, so take it or leave it.
Yeah.
But
Well, the point is,
I don't
the
know.
guy.
He seems so sketchy. The guy seems sketchy. Okay.
Markets himself as a maestro. He is
Sam,
that guy.
We're losing you a lot.
Okay,
One more time.
He's marketing himself as the maestro person, and
Yeah,
he's
maestro.
the person who's,
Oh, I love that. He's the maestro. It's like that episode of Seinfeld where Elaine's boyfriend wants to be referred to as the maestro.
Yeah, well, this is the last thing that classical music needed is this kind of
That's
sting.
that's the big story here.
Yeah.
Is that we now are just digging ourselves deeper into the hole of classical music as fancy and for fancy people, and if you're not fancy, then screw you. Like that's the message that a lot of people seem to get from classical music. Hopefully, they don't get it from conversations like ours, but clearly that's what they're getting from people like this weird dude and the coverage of this social network. Whoever is doing the PR for this social network is clearly, using this guy as their main source of information, and they're sending everybody to, hey, if you have $9,000 and think Facebook has too many pores on it, and you want to interact with other people that have $9,000 to blow on a stupid website thing, you probably like classical music like this asshole.
Yeah,
that's what I'm getting.
That's it. That's the cliff notes we were looking for there, Dave.
Yeah, but
Perfect.
I don't know if there's anything we can do about it other than point it out and say this guy does not speak for the rest of us. But unfortunately, he is speaking on CNN, and we are speaking on SoundNotion.
Well, there is something we can do, and I already put my Twitter power behind this. Drew,
Your Twitter power?
Yes, Drew suggests getting Bill Edens to quote break his foot off in this guy's ass, and so I already tweeted such a request and tagged. But if everybody starts hammering Maestro Eden's Twitter account with requests to break his foot off in this guy's butt, I think we might see some action.
Well, he's been writing a little bit more on the Sticks and Drones blog the last couple of months, so I think he might get that.
Yeah, so I will tag him again when we do the show notes. But
Sure.
Everybody else out there, if you want to hear, and he's pretty good at the calm, collected takedown piece. Like he doesn't get mad in your face, but it's still a very effective takedown. So,
Well, he does the mad angry one too, though. He does that pretty good too. This idea of classical music is for fancy people. Do you ever run into problems with that at the library, Nick?
Believe it or not, not so much.
Because you talked about you talked about including more vernacular music in your programming, and I'm wondering if that was part of it.
No, I think that there is a certain audience for art music, and there is a lot of stuff that we can do to grow that audience for people who might not be connoisseurs or have music in their background. But there's a certain segment of the population that just might only be into jazz or R&B and that sort of thing, and we want to sort of embrace that rather than sort of shun that.
Right.
So it's really neat. You can see in our audience from one night to another, it could be 90% different people, and depending on the artist, we could have all kinds of new people in for the first time. Like we had Gregory Porter last season, who's a really hot R&B and soul and jazz vocalist who won the Grammy last year, and it was probably 95% new people in the audience for the first time, which is great. So as long as we can continue to bring in new people and have a full house, we're happy, I think. And it's tricky because there was a time when our tickets weren't as popular as they are right now. So there's a regular core audience who comes to everything no matter what, and we appreciate them. But sometimes when our shows are selling really well for free, those people might have more trouble getting the tickets. So sometimes the people who really want to be there all the time are facing a struggle because there's so much competition from the general public now for the tickets. So that's probably the best problem that we could have, I think, right now. And it's really an interesting phenomenon. And there are a lot of other free series in town, but none that present our level of artists for free. So it's a neat thing, and we have a sort of interesting following, and we do get a sort of a portion of people who are here just visiting BC all the time. I had a music student in from, I think she was in from LA this past week, and she came to a panel that we did on Thursday, and she was just blown away by it all and didn't know that we did it. So as long as we keep having that kind of reaction, we're in good shape.
Nice.
Well, and it probably helps that you get to do it for free.
Yeah.
Right? You can bring in anybody for anything, and regardless of what the circumstances of the performance are, giving it away for free is automatically making it more comfortable and more approachable for everybody. So I think that's something that you as the library programming music for free and all kinds of music are helping to combat things like this weird dude and this crazy social network.
Yeah.
Which I can't imagine. Do you guys think this is going to be around? Is this really something that's going to last?
No.
I mean, if they get 3
No.
people to join, they'll got that. That's enough money to have a server running somewhere, right?
Well, think of all the exclusive social clubs that cost tens of thousands of dollars to be in every year.
Yeah, but you're paying
You actually
for
have
the
a physical
mahogany,
space.
and you're paying it's nice oak. A website is a website. I mean, you can make we can make SoundNotion look amazing, just as and work just as well as another website that has a $10,000 budget for, I don't know. I don't think they're
Yeah,
the
you
same.
think this is doomed?
I do.
Well,
I really do.
that's
I mean,
just,
maybe
that's
you know
you're
what?
just being fancy.
Maybe you know what? Maybe it will have a few people who will join, and they'll make a few.
I mean, so to keep something like
$30,000
this
or something
running,
like
they
that.
only need a few people to join, right?
That's the
Like
thing.
for a website that costs $10,000 or $9,000 to start up and $3,000 a year to be a social network and to just be consistently available does not cost $12,000. That does not if you got 10 people to join this thing, you'd be able to run it for 20 years with those 10 people's money and still make money on it. Right? I mean, there's no reason.
I mean, who's
You're
going to
questioning whether anybody's going to join. Clearly, they already have at least a couple of people that have joined. They don't need any more than that, do they?
I don't know. I mean, I just don't see it being successful. I mean, once someone joins and they're like, "Oh, here's all the money," to join this thing, they're going to see that there are only 10 people on it and be like, "I'm not going to use this ever again."
But those are the 10 people they want to talk to. I think the problem with Facebook is that it has all those poor people on it.
I guess maybe they'll have to see who is already a member. Like if
You know
can
what?
search
I
on
bet
it.
they seed it with fake people.
Probably.
That's what I would do.
And
That's how they
fancy
get that's how they get the first people on there, and then they take away all those seated people.
That's what Reddit did.
Little by little.
Reddit employees were in early days of Reddit were faking people Reddit accounts and commenting and upvoting and downvoting things at Reddit.
Interesting.
Anyway, I think that's a good place to leave Metropolitan with all the fake rich people. All those fake rich people should feel free to donate to their local arts organizations and to the Library of Congress Performing Arts funds. Nick, do you have anything to plug coming up before we sign off?
Yeah, I think our 5 commissions this year are pretty exciting. So if anyone's interested in them, please do check them out. On October 30th, for our 150th birthday celebration for Mrs. Coolidge, we're going to have a new piece by George Lewis, performed by Ensemble Don Niente. Then we have the Jefferson Friedman on December 5th. On January 23rd, we have a new string quartet by John Adams, which was a co-commission between us and Juilliard, Carnegie, Stanford, and Wigmore Hall. And then we have a new viola concerto by Jennifer Higdon that Bob Spano is going to conduct in March with Roberto Diaz playing and the Curtis Chamber Orchestra.
He's
And
not
then-
going to have anything else to do at that time.
Yeah, and then a new trio by Kaya Saryaho in May of next year.
Sweet.
That was a slam on the Atlanta Symphony, if anybody didn't catch that.
Zing.
Zing. See what I did there? Well, that's awesome.
We hope
And
we hope they
where,
come back soon.
and where should we go to follow you on the internet?
So loc.gov/concerts is one place. And then if you are interested in checking out our Facebook page, facebook.com/Library of Congress Performing Arts. And if you're interested in my own musings, I'm at Frenchhorn88 on Twitter.
Awesome. Excellent. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of SoundNotion. Thank you for joining us. Those who were watching live, we really appreciate that. If anybody would, if you're listening to this recorded and you think I would like to participate in this conversation live while it's happening, we do that Sundays 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and you can join at live.soundnotion.tv, and we'll also tweet and Facebook post links to that when we're going live each week. So you can go there and you can contribute to the conversation in the question and answer thing on YouTube if I have figured out how to set it up correctly now, and I think I did because we had one today. So thanks to everyone who does that, and I would encourage you to do that in the future if you've not done it before. If you would like to connect with us and continue this conversation after the fact, you can find links to all the things that we talked about today at soundnotion.tv/SN. You can also leave a comment there. You can also connect with us on all of the social media places. As a group on Twitter, we're at SoundNotion. I'm at Dave McDowell. Nate is at AnnateTree. Patrick is at Vox Shibuya. Sam is at Housegoy. And Nick, as he just said, is at Frenchhorn88. So be sure to follow all of those people. Thank you to those of you who are already doing that. We're also on Facebook. You can subscribe to the channel on YouTube or wherever you like to connect with people on the internet. You can subscribe to this show and all our shows at soundnotion.tv in the iTunes store. If you'd like to support us, you can use the Amazon affiliate link on our site. It doesn't cost you anything, but if you search for the thing that you're already buying on Amazon through the search box on our site, we get a little commission for sending you there, so we really appreciate that. Thanks to those of you who are doing that, and thanks also to those of you who are using the PayPal donation buttons on our site as well. SoundNotion's introduction includes music by Patrick Gullo. Thank you so much for watching or listening, and we'll see you back next week.